Hey y'all, Matt here. Today I wanted to talk real quick about a topic that I thought was really interesting, and that's the historical Jesus. And basically, what the historical Jesus is, when I say historical Jesus, I basically mean Jesus in history. Can we go back in history, and is there spots in history where Jesus is accurately depicted as who the Bible says he was? And the answer is yes, if you don't want to watch the whole video. But we're going to talk today about why or where some of these sources are. To begin with, we're going to talk real quick about one thing with archaeology, because sometimes you may hear somebody that's kind of antagonistic towards the faith. They may present a doubt that Jesus existed because there's no archaeological evidence for the existence of Jesus. And while this is true, this isn't something that cancels out Jesus or makes his life invalid. It's not anything that should make us doubt that he was an actual historical, real person that walked the face of the earth. And that is because, according to scholar Bart Ehrman, the reality is that we don't have archaeological records for virtually anyone who lived in Jesus' time and place. This lack of evidence does not mean that a person at the time didn't exist. It means that he or she, like 99% of the rest of the world at the time, made no impact on the archaeological record. So this shouldn't be concerning, even though some people present it as concerning. And I'll explain why as we continue on and talk about some other historical documents. But the most overwhelming source that we have that talks about Jesus, obviously, is in our Bibles. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They have the most information about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And sometimes because they're in our Bibles, we forget that they are actual historical documents, but they are. But for the purposes of today, because, I don't want to just say, hey, I can confirm that Jesus exists because he's in the Bible. We're going to talk about two extra biblical sources, or sources that are outside of the Bible, that also confirm that Jesus was a real, literal, historical person who walked the face of the earth, and that we can believe this without a doubt. The first source is the historian Josephus. Josephus mentions him twice in his Jewish Antiquities, which is a history of the Jewish people that was written about 93 AD. If you're familiar with the Jewish timeline, or the historical timeline, most scholars believe that Jesus was born about 0 to 3 AD, and that he died somewhere around 33 AD. So the fact that he wrote this at about 93 AD is important, because that's less than 60 years from the time that Jesus died. So he's very close historically to this time period. So he would have lived, he would have been able to talk to witnesses, he would have been able to talk to people that even were witnesses to Jesus' ministry, first-hand followers of Jesus. And he writes about Jesus as a historical person. So if anybody would have known that, or been able to disprove the existence of Jesus, it would have been him, because he's so close. Josephus was actually born about 37 AD, which is about the time Jesus was crucified. And so he would have grown up around a lot of the first-hand believers, as the early church was getting started. He would have known a lot of these people that had seen and heard Jesus. And like I said before, if this was false, he would have been able to prove it pretty easily. And one of the things that I think is most convincing about Josephus for our purposes today is that he wasn't a Christian. So because he's not a Christian, he has no bias in his writing. He has no reason to say Jesus existed if he didn't exist. So that's Josephus. Source number two is a guy named Tacitus. He was another Roman emperor, or Roman historian and senator. Very influential historian, very accurate in his work. And he mentions Jesus in his history of the Roman Empire in about 116 AD. So we're talking a little later than Josephus, but not much. And so he has a lot of the same, strengths as Josephus. He would have been able to talk to first-hand witnesses. He would have been able to very easily disprove this if it had happened, or if it was false. And what Tacitus does in his work is he confirms the New Testament account that Jesus' crucifixion happened, and also that Pilate was the leader in Judea at the time of Jesus' crucifixion. And this is important because both of these guys, they documented some of Jesus's life and ministry. And while they're not specifically, giving us exactly what we want, if it were up to me, I'd have them both write, this is what I found and this is what all the witnesses said about it. But these works weren't even talking about Jesus specifically. Jesus was just mentioned because he was so influential during that time period. And so there's no bias here, and we can rest assured that both of these works confirm that Jesus was a literal historical person that walked the face of the earth. And also from these accounts, we can confirm some details that we see in the Gospels, such as the fact that he was a person, he was a Jew, that he had followers or disciples as we know him, and that he was executed by the Roman governor of Judea, who's Pontius Pilate. And so, closing this conversation, what I want you to take from this is that there is no reason to doubt that Jesus was a real, literal, historical person. The presentation that you get in your Gospels is history, and that we have no reason to doubt that. There's even more sources out there that talk about Jesus in passing, as other historians and stuff, as they mention him, but we just don't have time to cover all of them today. But that's what I want you to take out of this. Jesus was a literal, real, historical person, and that there's, no matter what anybody tells you, there's no reason to doubt that. So if there's any other topics you want me to hit, any other things that interest you, any questions, whatever, please comment, send me a message, whatever, get them to me. I'd love to cover ideas that are questions that y'all have. I'm trying to just kind of hit stuff as it comes up really quickly. Like I said, these are supposed to be about 5-minute videos. We went over a little bit today, but if you like these videos, please continue to watch them. Subscribe to the channel so you can get updates, and don't forget to share them with your friends. I love y'all. Blessings.